Okay, Tate, I've got a scenario for you.
Okay,
So
give me the
the
scenario.
moon is gonna hit the world in 3 days, okay? And you
Okay.
have to save the world. But if anyone calls you Chicken Little, you just instantly die. What do you do?
I don't say the sky's falling. I specifically target the moon to
And
throw them
you
off.
you think people won't call you Chicken Little just because you specifically list the moon? That's part of the sky, I feel.
Okay, how about I go to a country where Chicken Little isn't relevant?
Mmm, that's smart.
Here's the thing. That immediately eats up one of my days. So like I got 2 days, so I'm screwed.
This just doesn't work for you.
Like I gotta go to like a non-English speaking nation and have no support. So like my mission's immediately failed.
Okay, well, I'm Patrick with Royas, and this is
Tate. Oh, okay.
well, that intro could have been a little smoother, but you know what?
No,
It was
it
the
was perfect.
it was the best we can do. On
Okay, we're shaking it up.
Yeah, we're talking about game design today, actually.
And we chose Majora's Mask, and I think the reason we chose it is this is neither Patrick's or my favorite Zelda game.
By the
We
way,
love
we
Zelda.
both love Zelda. We have played so many Ocarina of Time randomizers, it's insane.
I think I've played every 3D Zelda except Tears of the Kingdom.
You finished. You've played. You've played Tears
Yeah,
of the Kingdom.
I finished. I have played Tears of the Kingdom. Wasn't my cup of tea.
Yeah. So I think that makes us maybe mildly qualified. Plus, we're also game developers, so that might...
Okay.
Okay. So what do you want to first talk about with Majora's Mask?
Okay, considering I don't know if the viewers played this game or seen this game, I want to talk about mechanics.
Okay, yeah, let's discuss mechanics. Tell me.
Okay, so there are four types of gameplay styles essentially that this game gives you, and you will have to be utilizing all of them. There is the Deku Scrub, which is a little guy and he's fast but doesn't do a lot of damage. Then there's your human form, which is like medium speed, but your combat's extremely quick.
You
And
got
then
a
there's the
sword and
Goron,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah, you have a sword and you get to swing, whereas the Deku Scrub you're like spinning. And again, it doesn't really do much damage, and straight up some enemies he can't do damage. There is the Goron, who is hyper fast movement across maps, but is hyper slow in combat, but hits like a
truck.
Yeah, he hits like a truck. And then there's the Zora, who he can range and has water combat.
And he's quite agile too.
Yeah, he's a fish person. Yeah, he's agile, but like his combat's really hard and he can't really hit short things.
Yeah. And you have 3 days to save the world from the moon crashing into the earth, thus the intro. But you can sing this song and restart time, but you restart back at day 1 and you lose a lot of your stuff. Not everything is lost, but a lot of your things are lost, like your money and your bombs and stuff like that.
And I'm assuming that's where most of our conversation is going to take place, is that 3-day clock.
Yeah, that 3-day clock cycle really makes it a unique experience. In my
unique
opinion.
from most other games. I'm actually surprised more horror games haven't taken it up, because that immediate putting pressure on the player, I fully believe enforced the narrative to have to be more horror oriented and more eerie.
Yeah, this is like the creepiest Zelda. If you're not a person who follows Zelda, it's got this very creepy, strange atmosphere around it the whole time you're playing it.
And I fully believe that came out of game design rather than story, because oftentimes I think AAA games, I haven't worked in AAA, but in AAA games, I believe they start often with a story outline.
Yeah.
I fully think this game the story was more influenced by the clock mechanic rather than the clock mechanic was influenced by the story.
Which is super unique. Yeah, because I think usually they have this game design doc, they have this general story they want to tell, and then they kind of lay out the mechanics to match what they're trying to achieve with the story.
Yeah, this one, it just feels like they realized how much pressure they put on the player right away. Because, like, right out the gate, there's a clock and you're told you got 3 days or that moon's gonna fall.
And figure it out.
Figure it out. And so, like, they immediately put a lot of pressure on the player. And we know many people who will not play this game because of that stress.
We know people who get stressed out in Stardew because of that clock. There's a clock there. Some people are just going to be naturally stressed. This one's got pressure on it, whereas Stardew doesn't. Stardew, it's like, oh, who cares? A day goes by. Whereas this, it's like, no, the world's dying. It sucks. And you're given not too much direction in the first 3 days.
No, it's very much that old school game design of not signposty and handholdy, which is very 90s. And nowadays, I saw I was watching a Tim Kaine video and someone was asking, why are there yellow lines everywhere to point you where to go? This is not that. Like, you really have to figure it out. You're not given too much. It's like, hey, we should talk to the fairy. She'll know what to do. And like, that's as far of direction as you get when you start.
Yeah, and Tim Kaine was like the lead designer, I think, on the original Fallout game.
Yeah, he was the creator of Fallout and most notably Outer Worlds.
Yeah, and if you're also into South Park, he made the Stick of Truth as well.
Yeah, he has a great channel. If you want to learn game design, highly recommend his channel.
Yeah, look it up. There's so much good content.
Where was I?
I think
go ahead.
Oh, I think the 3-day mechanic really does something else that's really unique, where it allows them to make much less content, and that content goes a lot further because you're constantly repeating the same 3-day cycles.
Yeah, the 3-day mechanic is, I think, an ingenious method of padding. In a lot of RPGs, not saying Zelda's an RPG, but in RPGs, for example, grinding is a way they try and make sure the game is a decent length, because like gamers want a specific length. Specifically at the time, it was like $1 per hour kind of deal.
Yeah, I
remember
wanted doing that calculation. Yes.
Yeah, and so like at the time, length was a big deal, and it still is. But like, you needed padding. You couldn't have high quality content because you didn't have that kind of time. So like, this was a great way of having you repeat content, but keeping it feeling a little bit fresh and not really making you think how much you're repeating, I guess.
Yeah, well, and you often played similar storylines but made different choices. There's that old lady at the start who gets her bag stolen, and you can choose to attack the thief and get her bag back, or you can choose to let him go. And things will happen differently based on what happens there.
Yeah, and you're going to get different rewards based on each scenario.
Yeah, so it's like that content stays the same, but you're just getting double the length out of it.
Yeah. But I do believe this has a lot of problems. Waiting around is a problem. That's in the design.
A massive problem. So many times, like, you're just sitting there. You do eventually get this song where you can kind of skip to like the next section of the day. So the days are split into morning and night, right? And you can kind of just play this song and skip to the night part of that day, or you can play the song if you're in the night part and skip to the next morning, and to try and speed things up. But if an event happens in like the middle, you're kind of just screwed. You have to just sit there.
And like, they don't usually give you enough things where like you can, I guess, how do I say this? You min-max your pathing. You're more just sort of waiting. Like, it's like, oh, I screwed up this quest. Now I've got to go and wait. I know how this quest goes, so I could just rush through everything. Now I got to go just wait.
Yeah.
For half a day or something.
Yeah, and that can be quite frustrating. And then some quests have multiple things that happen kind of in the middle of that morning evening cycle. And so it's just like, you can be waiting 20 minutes maybe, I don't know, for a single redo of your quest.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
Okay, I was gonna say that brings me to actually the quest thing is the same, has this other issue of you have to go through the quests multiple times if you screw them up.
Yes.
And sometimes you have to redo like the whole chain of events. Like, there's the Keaton mask quest where it's like you have to redo the whole thing. You kind of get the one cafe mask where you get to skip one step basically at the start after doing it the first time.
Yeah, and like, there's something, I think that's where a section they can improve is,
Mm-hmm.
here's the thing, this game really prioritizes you making a difference in the world. Is like, that is a huge theme throughout this game. It's like, you complete a dungeon, the map's going to change to be more peaceful and serene. But
Yes.
like, there is this feeling that like your progress is gonna be ripped away the moment you go back in time, and so I think they could have been a little more kind to you and like maybe not rolled back everything.
Yeah, like you keep your masks that you've earned, but like it would be nice to have more checkpoints throughout the quests where it's like, okay, I've hit this checkpoint, I
Maybe the
don't have
mask
to
could have been like
redo
a
everything.
the mask could have been like a good checkpoint of like, you throw on the Keaton mask and you talk to Cafe, it's like, oh, like you just skipped a huge section of this quest
Yeah,
to a checkpoint. And so like, I think they could have really checkpointed out all the quests with that, so you wouldn't be constantly repeating yourself.
yes. And I think that's actually something they did kind of well in Brighter Shores with they had that inventory. They have like a quest inventory and a regular game inventory. You know, I feel like if they gave you the Majora's Mask, they gave you that quest inventory, and that didn't reset every 3 days, that might help.
Yeah.
Or some way to split things up in that way, so that you don't just lose everything.
Like, obviously we're talking from like almost 30 years later.
Yeah.
But obviously hindsight is like 2020.
But I also feel like this game is a masterpiece, so it's good to kind of look into what they did well and what they didn't do perfectly.
Yeah. And that brings me to another topic is, I think that annoyance of the player repeating themselves is why this mechanic has never really been repeated.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you would think for such an influential game, this mechanic, horror, I thought, for example, would be eating up this mechanic because it immediately puts pressure on the player. But like, this one hasn't been really repeated. I think it's because, again, you kind of lose a lot of players along the way with that, with the clock. And rage quitting, it's like, oh, I have to redo this dungeon all over again. And so a lot of players are just going to rage quit your game and never pick it up again.
Yeah. Well, and also the game just is made to often feel harder because of that clock. It's like you're doing these puzzles and you're panicking. You're like, I am on night of day 3. I have to rush. So these things that probably you would get right away are all of a sudden difficult because you are in stress mode. You were trying to rush through everything as quick as possible.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah, so like you just are constantly you are under pressure constantly in this game, and I think that's great. But I like you said, I can't think of another game that has really utilized this reset mechanic, this Groundhog Day mechanic, to the same degree. I could be wrong, and please leave a comment if you know of a game. I would love to try it if
Yeah, like,
someone has explored this.
here's the thing. Just, I think literally putting the clock at the start of the game it's immediately gonna have to make it more horror oriented. I can only think of Alex Kidd in Techland, that Master System game
Oh
we
my
played.
goodness.
Is the only one I can think where it's like it put you on a timer immediately, but it wasn't trying to scare you at all. Or
Mhm.
put pressure on you, like, because I played Fallout and they immediately, the original Fallout a little bit, not my cup of tea, but immediately, you have 150 days or your whole colony dies. And it's like, okay, now I'm a bit stressed, and they're gonna keep reminding you about that. So
Subnautica kind of did that too with the ship. It's like, oh, there's this major radiation leak. You have to get that fixed before everything dies. There's no real actual pressure, but I remember the whole time I was like, I gotta fix this thing. Where do I go? What do I do? And so, no, immediately that makes you more stressed. And it makes the horror aspect so much worse because if you screw up, it's like, oh no, I've wasted so much time.
yeah, and the punishment isn't that bad. It's just, I imagine games don't like to make you repeat yourself a lot. Specifically repeat yourself in the exact same way. Yes, you could always point at Assassin's Creed and say, yes, you're repeating the same 3 quests.
Yeah, the
with
same
different
quest
story
cycles.
elements.
But yeah, they're different. You're following someone through a different part of the city or whatever. It's slightly different. Whereas this is no, I know exactly what turns they're gonna make. I know exactly what they're gonna do.
Exactly.
So do you have another topic you want to cover?
I'm actually out of my notes. Sorry.
Okay. So I thought that there was a really interesting thing that they did because it's kind of a bit of a collect-a-thon. I feel like you've got all these masks you can collect, and there's all these things
Yes.
throughout the world that you can collect. I found the fairies in the dungeons very interesting because in a lot of collect-a-thons they will really hide a lot of things from you. Whereas the fairies, they force you. Some of these dungeons, you have to spawn some of these fairy chests. And you have to like interact with them to progress. But that's just so that you know that they're there. And then others they hide really well. And I feel
Yeah,
like
it.
that's a very unique experience.
I think that's a great example of signposting that doesn't feel like signposting.
Yeah, it just feels very
Like,
natural.
They give you a chest. You're gonna open it.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
There's no question that you're gonna open that chest. So it's, oh, there are fairies, and then immediately 1 of 9 or whatever. I don't exactly remember the number,
I
but
think it's like 15.
yeah, 1 of 15. And it's like, oh, there's this mechanic here that I didn't know existed.
Yeah. Well, and also, if you do know it exists, I was actually just playing the final dungeon of Majora's Mask the other day, and just passively playing the dungeon, I got 9 fairies without going for them out of 15. So at the end of the dungeon, I had to make this decision: am I going to look for the final 6, or am I going to go and fight this boss? And there's like this really cool decision I had to make all of a sudden, and I thought that was just honestly fantastic. I was like, this is a cool feeling.
Yeah.
And I can't think of too many games that I see do that. So
One thing that is my favorite in this game is the interactivity of the dungeons.
mhm,
Is the dungeons all have kind of a gimmick.
they do. They all
Where
have
it's
like a
like-
unique feel and feel very distinct.
Whereas the second dungeon, for example, you're hitting out ice pillars to try and lower a platform. The third dungeon, you're manipulating water flow. The fourth dungeon, you're flipping it upside down.
Yeah.
Or you're upside down. I don't exactly remember which. And I think that's something that hasn't really been repeated in a lot of other Zelda games. Some have gimmicks. The water almost always has a gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
But in Oot, I'm trying to think of like what others had such a obvious gimmick.
Yeah, they all kind of have the thing with their item, but it's not a super strong gimmick.
Yeah, it's another way of how you're modifying the dungeon to complete it.
Skyward Sword, I also thought did a really good job with that, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I think another thing the game does really, really well is everything feels rewarding. The worst kind of reward you can kind of get in the game is a heart piece. If you get a heart piece, I'm like, oh man, that reward sucked. But honestly, a heart piece is kind of a nice, bad reward.
Well, okay.
You know?
Also, if it's here's 20 rupees, that does feel bad.
Okay, but there's not too many of those.
Like-
That's true. There's some of those chests. If you do those side quests, you get the masks, and then the masks lead to another mask, and those all feel really good to get because they do something. And the fairies, you collect all of them. The Great Fairy gives you great rewards. I love the Great Fairy rewards. They're amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't feel like they had too many. The duds weren't that big. They didn't have that many dud rewards.
Okay, Patrick, I wanna ask you something.
Okay.
And I want the viewers to play along with this. What do we think were the priorities for this game? What do they want you to feel? And what do you think they really wanted to prioritize
Okay.
throughout the game with the game design?
I feel like they wanted to make you feel pressure. You had to do things quickly and efficiently.
Okay, so you think that was fully intentional as they wanted.
I do. What was the second question?
That was basically it.
Oh,
Is like, what did that's because you can go on many things. Like, for example, they prioritize the feeling of actions changing the world.
Yeah.
That was clearly a heavy priority for the dev team because it hasn't really been. Zelda's always had a bit of that.
Mhm.
But it hasn't been repeated to this scale since. You're modifying land.
Yeah, honestly, every single action you have in this world feels impactful. Going back to that lady who gets robbed, that actually has major consequences on the world.
And so I'm trying to think of a third thing where what do you think the designers were trying to I feel like they wanted you to be a fish out of water. They kept shaking it up with the new mask and new controls.
Yeah, I think
I
that's
think they really wanted a lot of variety in the gameplay so that they could repeat a lot of the content again.
yeah. I also think that they wanted to make you care about the characters. The other Zeldas, generally speaking, the characters are kind of whatever, right? Woo. But in this one, you're saving someone's like babies, her eggs. And you feel
Yeah.
initially connected to this storyline because you're taking the soul of the person who was tasked with saving everything. And I think
Yeah.
I at least genuinely cared about that storyline. So I think they wanted me to care about the characters in the world rather than just like Link and Zelda. Everyone else, who cares?
Yeah. Yeah, I do think they really wanted this Zelda game to feel novel.
Yes. Do you
Novel. Oh, go ahead.
do you think the reason some people don't like this Zelda game as much are because their expectations were misaligned? This doesn't feel like other Zelda games in a lot of ways. Like it plays like Ocarina of Time. Don't get me wrong. It plays a lot like it, but it
The
feels
clock. The
yeah,
clock changes design.
yeah. Well, and you're playing as a Goron and a Zora and a Deku Scrub as well as Link.
Yeah. I think yes, because in normal Zelda games, your expectation is a pretty chill ride.
And a hack and
Do
slash.
hack and slash, do things at your own pace. Specifically, do things at your own pace.
Yes.
A lot of Zelda games want to give you a lot of time to explore.
And figure things out and go down the
Whereas
wrong
this
path.
Whereas this one, it's like, no. Like, you do, obviously, you will always get that time to explore. You have a reset.
There's a punishment for
There's
resetting.
there's a punishment, and you're going to have to do setup time. You're going to have to get all your bombs. You're going to have to get all your arrows again.
Yeah, you're gonna have to do the Goron loop once you get him around the city.
Yeah, where you just roll and roll through bushes and get your items. Yeah.
I will say that's actually one of the more satisfying ways to like regen your supplies. It's super easy to do, and it just kind of feels fun to do laps. Maybe I'm weird, but it kind of feels fun.
I always like that too, because the Goron feels so powerful.
Yes, and you're going
I
fast.
think that's a fun case of good sound design. Really makes it.
Yeah.
It's like you get to speed up and then you get a little boom.
Even
And
just
all
like
of
a
sudden you've got
mundane
spike.
task.
Yeah. So I think that's an example of really good sound design.
Yes. And just the sound of going fast has like that or I'm not doing it justice, but there's that sound of your like mana draining, and it just makes you feel like you are speed,
Yeah.
which I really like. But it's still a punishment. Like I wouldn't choose to go around as the Goron, for an extra hour, or if I've got all my stuff, I'm not gonna do 5 more laps just for the fun of it.
Yeah. One thing I thought they did poorly, and this is just old Zeldas in general, the economy seems pretty bad.
Oh yes, absolutely. I think that actually probably would have helped with the wait times a lot, is if they gave you fun things to do with the economy, but they just didn't.
Yeah. Oh, you buy the bomb bag, and then you buy a bigger bomb, and that's kind of the only thing you use your money on, really.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Sometimes it's like you can get a mask. There's one mask you have to buy.
Yeah,
but
for the
that's
most part,
it.
I just put money in my bank and I don't think about it.
Yeah, I accrue it, and that's the fun part.
Number goes up.
Number goes up. There's entire genres of games that number go up. It is their only hook, but
well, and then the person goes like, "Wow, that's a lot of money." After to make you feel like you're rich.
That's your reward, and then it's like you get a bigger wallet or a heart piece or 5 rupees. Okay.
I'm rich already. Here's 5 rupees.
Yeah. No, I think the economy could have used some help, but like I don't think. Here's what I'm gonna say is I don't think the designers really prioritized that.
I don't think they had time.
And so it's hard to critique that because I don't think they really cared. Like,
what would you do to fix the economy? Like, what would you give somebody so that it would make the wait times feel less bad?
Oh, that's a hard one.
because they do have like the mini games you can play for the heart pieces, but those are like 20 rupees each. Uh, yeah, like what would you do to fix that economy?
That's something we've discussed a lot, and it's like maybe being able to buy, maybe an efficient way to buy weapons
Mm-hmm.
and or gear, like specifically stock up again. Maybe you go back in time and you can quickly stock up instead of doing the loop. I think art immediately fixes it and it has a money drain.
Okay, yeah. So like maybe you go and just buy
A set of arrows,
yeah.
bombs,
You
like,
buy like a pack that has everything.
and like, yeah, exactly. It doesn't take
adventurous
a long time.
Yeah,
But that's really all I can think of. And again, I don't want to critique them too much on that because
I don't think they prioritized it.
I don't think that was something they were super interested in. So,
But
and
yeah.
like to be fair, the game didn't really need it. So,
No, because oftentimes you were doing the loop while you were waiting for something. At
yeah.
least that's what I do when I'm waiting. Is like I just go and loop.
First thing I'm doing the loop. Like,
Yeah.
I'm getting some things and then I'm continuing.
Yeah, like I restart the days. I'm going Goron and I'm doing the loop. But
I imagine that was the intention there.
I think it has to be.
I imagine they're like, we got to give them like a fun little thing to get their stuff back quickly. But it's unfortunate that you only get that halfway through the game.
Yeah, literally, it's halfway.
Yeah. So it's an interesting idea, but I think it could have been implemented a bit sooner.
I definitely think so. Is there any like mini games or anything else that you would add? Maybe have them be able to play like these mini games or something for buffs for that set of 3 days. Maybe have little mini things that they can just do to be buffed for that set of 3 days.
Like what kind of buffs?
Like maybe a 10% movement speed or like half damage for that set of 3 days.
I feel like how would you narratively do that though?
I don't know.
Like, I feel like that you're running into the issue of the world and the fact that Zelda doesn't really give you buffs.
It's true. Zelda traditionally does not give you buffs. Well, I guess they do. They have like Neru's love and stuff. But yeah, especially the new ones. The new ones definitely have buffs.
Well, yeah, the food specifically, the new ones have buffs. I guess you could have.
I get. Would that
one's hard.
Would that fix it though?
And I don't think so.
Yeah, because you would have to have like an interesting enough mini game mechanic where it doesn't feel like a chore. Oh, I reset the day. I just gotta go play like this bomb shoe bowling again. Woohoo!
Yeah, I gotta go play bomb shoe bowling, or I gotta go through the maze.
Yeah, you could maybe do some procedurally generated stuff or like randomly generated mini games that are like fun, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I think that covers everything I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I'm good. Like, it's a good game, but it's weird, and it hasn't been repeated for a few reasons, obviously. But overall, it's good.
I think you could fix a lot of things and become much more hyper focused. I think the game covered a lot of ground because it's a Zelda game. I think if you tunneled in on specifically a few things, you could have a really tight experience there.
Yeah.
But
that's it.
I'm genuinely curious though if anyone has any resetting day mechanics that are
what was that 7 minutes game?
Oh,
7 minutes.
It wasn't 7 minutes. It was called Minute.
Oh,
it was really fun. I played it. You should play that sometime.
I should, and I think Outer Wilds also kind of has that resetting mechanic.
Oh, sweet. So,
but I haven't played it.
If anyone has any recommendations, please let us know. And if you have any thoughts about your Majora's Mask, please leave them in the comments. If you like this video, please like. And if you want more, please subscribe. All right. Thank you very much. Bye.
See you guys.